Welcome to the Film Focus Online podcast. I'm your host, Elliot Lines. BFI London Film Festival has been and gone, but there's still plenty to dive into. Joining me today, senior writers Alex Gilston and Jack Ransom. How are you both?
Good, yeah. Good to be here. Looking forward to chatting about LFF.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. And likewise, great to talk about one of my favourite times of the year.
Perfect. So, on today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been watching recently away from London Film Festival. We will talk about the guys' experience at London Film Festival, and then we will get on to some of their favourite movies and what they thought of the films that they saw. Should we do this? So first, we're going to go into what we've been watching, and we're going to start with you, Jack, and you're going to take us to the Sony universe.
Unfortunately, yeah. Against my better nature, saw the third Venom movie up in the IMAX of all places last week. I think the thing is now with these movies, I really feel like now that this is sort of come and gone, there's really nothing left for this Sony universe, despite most of this film being plans for what they intend to do with the future of it. That I don't really think anyone is genuinely excited for. I don't mind the first Venom movie. I don't mind the second one. I think it's quite good fun. Pretty much all the rest of their sort of like Sony Spiderless universe were a bit Morbius, Madam Web, I've just not particularly loved at all. But this one, honestly, I can't even say this is probably worse than Morbius. I actually found it more messy than Morbius in terms of its story. There's about 5 different plots going on at once, none of which seem to sort of coalesce into anything sort of consistent. It's just a big mishmash of just skits that seem barely even a film. It has to, I will say it genuinely has the worst comic book villain of all time in it. I genuinely think Null is the worst villain I've seen put to screen in a comic book movie. He does nothing apart from sit in a chair and threaten what he is going to do or intends to do in the future, which you'll be surprised to hear is to destroy the universe and everything in it, because we're not sick of hearing those motivations for villains before. Yeah, I thought, at least go in and have like 90 minutes of good fun, but it's not like the Tom Hardy talking to himself in a weird voice gimmick is kind of like stretched to maximum now. It's like there's a couple of chuckle-worthy moments. There's an ABBA back dance scene that was absolutely surreal to see in the IMAX, but it didn't sort of save the film at all. Yeah, it's I think Venom is, I think these Sony films just need to kind of stop after Craven, which I just remembered is coming out as well. Yeah, not good Venom 3, not good.
I believe a Sinister Six film's just been put out there.
That's a real threat. It's not an announcement, it's a threat.
So you gave this 1.5 stars out of 5. Is this the worst out of the 3?
Oh, by a mile, yeah. Like I think the first one kind of, it's just your sort of bog standard, like kind of mid-2000s feeling superhero kind of flick. The second one I actually think is quite fun. Like it actually has like quite a distinct like style with the cinematography, or Andy Serkis directing it, so like the mocap stuff looks great, and Woody Harrelson's having a great time as Carnage. But this third one, it's just like it's a real sort of hodgepodge of different ideas, and like you got a good cast there. You got Chiwetel Ejiofor, you got Juno Temple, I believe she's called, who's been obviously in Ted Lasso and lots of other things. And it's just they're like way sort of they're like above this kind of material, and they try and bring something to these characters, but they are just Chiwetel Ejiofor is angry soldier guy, she is scientist lady. And that's it. That's you get, and then you get Tom Hardy sort of just rambling to himself as he like hitchhikes across like deserts and into Las Vegas for like 5 minutes, and then he's on a military base, and there's a load of CGI splat in the finale, and it just ends with a montage of the cheesiest like. It's just, I don't know if we're going to spoiler territory. I don't know if anyone's kind of fussed, or it's been out like coming up a week now, so it sort of ends with a montage of like Eddie Brock kind of reminiscing on the great times he had with Venom, some of which you would have seen about 20 minutes prior because they used clips from the film that you've just watched. Yeah, it's just a mess. It's a real mess, and I think it's better than Madam Web. I mean, that's not really saying much, but honestly, I would say at least Morbius was kind of more consistent, kind of what was going on.
So, Alex, you've also seen this. Do you agree with what Jax said?
Yeah, unequivocally. I mean, I have never really been a fan of these films. I've never got it. I've never got the whole, oh, it's so charming, the Tom Hardy and Venom back and forth thing, and it's never really like landed with me anyway. So Jack's been probably a lot kinder than I would have been if I had to talk about this properly. I don't like being too negative anyway, so I'll keep my mouth shut on it. But it really does feel like, usually you just kind of throw a dart at a dartboard and see what sticks, but they threw like 25 darts at a dartboard, and then they were like, yeah, we're going to use all of those. Also, one of the most egregious uses of a Chekhov's gun that I've ever seen in a film ever. Is the worst. They couldn't have telegraphed it more. They may as well have put a massive subtitle on the bottom of the screen going, yeah, just keep this thing you're seeing now is going to be at the end of the film. It was, I hate saying terrible, but it was terrible. 2 hours I wish I could get back.
So, I think it's safe to say that Venom 3 is a big miss, as much of the Sony universe has been. I don't see that changing anytime soon, quite frankly. Shall we move on to something you've been watching then, Alec?
Yeah, and I hope this is a safe space. Because
Absolutely.
It's very different to just like saying, oh, just watch this at the cinema, or something like that. So I have a problem, and that problem is reality TV. I'm obsessed, and autumn is the best time for reality TV, and I've been watching so much. So I'll try and list them all, but I'll probably naturally forget some. I've been watching
Rattle through them.
Big Brother, Bake Off. Bake Off's been on. The thing is, you kind
class.
of exactly incredible. You kind of split them off into different categories because you have like the competition ones that are like the cookie. So you got Bake Off and MasterChef and stuff like that.
MasterChef.
Then you've also got Drag Race that goes into that category, and then you've got kind of like the social experiment ones. So like Big Brother, like I mentioned, Married at First Sight UK is currently on. I just can't get enough of it. It's so good seeing people be incredibly miserable for 6 weeks.
Me watching Venom.
That is a reality show within itself. No, but yeah, I mean, Big Brother's a big thing at the moment for me. I absolutely adore Big Brother. I have since I was a child, and I feel like it's better than it's ever been. I feel like ITV have really like brought it back and given it the je ne sais quoi it had back in the Channel 4 days.
They've gone up in the world.
Well, yeah, by one, well, two actually,
By one.
because they were on Channel 5. Yeah. They went down and then they went back up again. But yeah, it's been really good this year. There's been a lot of drama. There's been a lot of factions. We love factions. We love pitting groups of people against each other because they disagree over something incredibly menial, like somebody pretending that there's not a chicken in the oven when Big Brother's told them to take it away because they've been being punished. But yeah, I absolutely adore it, and I love people who are reality TV people. You're my people.
How'd you find the time?
I don't know. What's the answer to that? It's a lot harder, like I said, this time of year because there's genuinely so much. So it's like Big Brother at 9, Married at First Sight at 10. Then you've got to fit in all the others, like on a Tuesday, you've got to fit in Bake Off. On a Thursday, you've got to fit in Taskmaster. It's just like mind-boggling, but I do it for the love of it.
I mean, it's they're easy watches at the end of the day. That me and the other half love Bake Off. We missed it last night because we were at the cinema, but with first chance to catch up on it, we're there. MasterChef. I'm a big cooking reality show fan.
Yeah, we love the cooking ones. And MasterChef The Professionals has just started, and I love that.
Yeah,
because it's like Billy big, like chefs who are like, I'm so good at cooking, and then they come in to the kitchen and they can't even do choux pastry. Like it's just
up.
Glorious. Yeah.
Perfect. So speaking, obviously, I just mentioned that I went to cinema last night. I went to see Clint Eastwood's new film, Juror Number 2. I don't know how much you've both heard about this, but it's basically a courtroom drama starring Nicholas Hoult, where let's just say that this juror doesn't quite realise how much involvement he has in this case before he walks in that room. I liked it. I wanted to like it more because I really like the premise of it. The biggest problem of it, everything's in the trailer.
Get the sense. I thought the trailer was excellent, and I'm glad that we're getting like a proper release, because whatever they're playing at Warner Brothers in America by only releasing it in like 50 cinemas is crazy. As soon as it's Clint Eastwood, I thought the trailer looked good. I'm going to catch it next week.
That's what really intrigued me by it. I thought the trailer was fantastic, and the premise intrigued me, but it did just show too much, and it basically just showed its hand too early. You kind of knew what was happening. It made it predictable. Where can you go from that, really? You end up sort of just sitting in a courtroom, not really having any mystery. I think it probably would have benefited for revealing his story throughout the film rather than just throwing it out there straight away in the synopsis, in the trailer. Just give it a little bit more than just sitting there listening to lawyers, sitting into jurors chat about whether a guy that you already know hasn't done it. I'm midway through writing my review, and I'm kind of like toying with what star rating I'm going to give it. It wasn't unwatchable. I would recommend it for Clint Eastwood fans, definitely, but I was a little disappointed, to say the least. Nicholas Hoult, though, fantastic.
Yeah.
Love Nicholas Hoult.
A good cast in it. Is it Tony Collette as well?
Yeah, Tony Collette. J.K. Simmons was in it briefly, severely underutilised. Throwing a big star in like that and then not using them to their full potential. But yeah, I would recommend people to see it. But especially if you're into courtroom dramas, for me, I quite like that genre. I don't really know why, because they can be quite boring, but
there's some great on me. I like 12 Angry Men. I love Witness for Prosecution. There's some really good ones. Then I was hoping this one would be good.
I actually watched 12 Angry Men for the first time not too long ago, and I adored it.
Oh,
so
no,
nice.
I love that movie.
So that's the end of what we've been watching. Before we move on to our main segment, I wanted to ask you guys about your London Film Festival experience. See, I know you both experienced it in very different ways. So if we start with you, Alex, as you were there for the longest amount of time, how did you find it?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. This is the second time I've been in person now, and if I had to compare the two, this year is definitely a lot better in terms of just the kind of hanging around with everybody, and also the films actually were of a higher quality. I only gave one film lower than 3.5 stars.
Yeah, nice.
Which I think is pretty good. But yeah, it's weird because you get kind of a bit of like Stockholm syndrome with it. It's so tiring because you're watching like 3-4 films a day over like the space of a week. But then once you leave, and although you're absolutely exhausted by the end of it, you're like, I was back there just watching films, talking to people about them afterwards, going doing cool stuff like that. And yeah, it was really good.
Sounds of it. The community is fantastic. We all know that from X and any other socials that you go on, but they really do come together during these things and get everyone together and, talk the things that we love, I suppose. How many films did you watch?
I think I watched about 17 altogether over the week.
And that was over about a space for a week, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy when you think about it, but
it's hard work. It's very hard work. When I did Sundance, what must have been 3 years ago now, I think after watching the end of the second film, I just wanted to go and curl up in bed and not look at a screen for weeks.
The worst thing is when you're watching 3 films in a day and you know that the last film is the one that you've got to review, and you're like, oh no, my brain is actually mush, but We have to power through.
So, Jack, moving on to you then. How did your experience differ from Alex's? Obviously, Alex was there for a week, but you kind of experienced it differently.
Yeah, so I was mainly going on weekends. So last year I believe I did 4 films. This year I did 6, which is cool. So I'm hoping next year I manage to sort of get some time off during the week and sort of do a bit like Alex does, sort of have that week of just kind of, going up there each day and like trying even more different films. But yeah, I managed to see pretty much like the main ones I wanted to see. So I saw 6. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, as I say, I went with my friend for most of the screenings, and then the last one, Flow, I saw solo. But yeah, it was good. Similar to Alex, I think there was only one film I wasn't particularly keen on, didn't click with me, called Triumph. But the rest of them, it was all 3.5s or more that I gave them. Yeah, it was a really good experience, and just to echo what Alex said, like it's just really cool seeing a load of people like running between different cinemas across London. And clearly everyone's like there for the same reason, and they see the big sort of BFI advertisements everywhere, and you can just sort of it's cool. It's like they're heading to the IMAX, they're heading to Curzon, Soho, they're heading to the South Bank and Prince Charles, and it's just really cool for that sort of week of everyone just sort of sharing that same interest in the hobby and a passion that they really love and can talk about with anyone that's sort of there at the event as well. Yeah, it was really cool. I look forward to it next year.
Yeah, definitely. Alex, do you have a biggest disappointment? I know you said obviously you only really gave one film under 3.5 stars, but what was your biggest disappointment?
I think, well, there's one film obviously, but to suggest that it was a disappointment would be to suggest that I had good expectations for it, but I didn't. That was The Apprentice, which I will not talk about it because I'll just get really angry. So we'll move away from that. I think maybe the only one that I kind of was like I had really high hopes for and maybe didn't like work as well for me as I wanted it to was Emilia Perez. I was going into that really, really hyped up about it. Thought, incredible cast, incredible concept. Thought really interesting, like story centered around a trans person. And I don't know, I didn't gel with it. I suppose it was one of those films that kind of come after already like having either a long day or a long day before the day that I watched it. So maybe I need to watch it again and be a bit more fair to it. But there seems to be a trend at the moment with musical films that don't really want to fully lean into being a musical. I feel like when in a musical film where the song feels like it could just be a conversation, you're kind of failing as a musical, and it happens if it doesn't like lean into being a musical. Probably it doesn't feel like it works as well. And I love a musical, so it was quite disappointing.
So, are you both ready to talk about some of the films you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to start with what I imagine was Alex's favourite film of the festival, and that is Queer. Now, this is directed by Luca Guadagnino. Is that right?
No,
Guadagnino, I think.
I say Guadagnino. Is it? Well, yeah, I can never.
This stars Daniel Craig, Leslie Manville, Drew Starkley, Jason Schwartzman. Just going to read off the synopsis here. Lee, who recounts his life in Mexico City among American expatriate college students and bar owners surviving on part-time jobs and GI Bill benefits, he is driven to pursue a young man named Allerton, who is based on Aldebert Lewis Marker. So, handing over to you, Alex. Tell us about Queer.
Yeah, definitely. I think the more I think about it, my favourite film of the festival. It switches between this one and one that we might talk about a bit later. But, I mean, first of all, can we just talk about the fact that Luca Guadagnino's already given us one of 2024's best films in Challengers, which I absolutely adore. It's been my number one film since it came out, really. Nothing's really kind of got close to it. What I said in my review is that some directors struggle to release one good film a year, let alone 2 good films. And that's what he's done here, because he basically, I was reading about it, and what he's done with Queer is basically taken most of the crew from Challengers, and they just went straight on to working on Queer. He even collaborated with the screenwriter of Challengers, Justin Kurtzkis, who you might know from a very popular internet meme. But yeah, so they just kind of went straight from Challengers straight into Queer, and we've got it this year, and I'm so happy about it because it is genuinely such a feast. It's really, really, really good. I'm a sucker. If you've ever read any of my writing on Film Focus, you know I love any film centered around the queer experience or queer people in general. Guadagnino's really just treated us this time. So it's kind of like an adaptation of a novel by William Burroughs, and that novel was autobiographical. So the film is kind of a film about William Burroughs as it is about the character of Lee, who Daniel Craig plays. And, Lee is kind of this lone wanderer who lives in a foreign land. He lives in Mexico City, and he's kind of wandering the streets and the bars, and to find connection. He just wants connection because he knows within himself that he is homosexual, and the way he kind of sees that is that it's a very negative thing, and it is a period piece as well. So I can't quite work out exactly. I would have to look that up, but I'm not sure what
60s, 70s?
Yeah, maybe something like that, yeah. And yeah, so he has a lot of kind of internalized, I suppose homophobia would kind of work in that kind of description. And then in looking for that connection, he meets up with Eugene Allerton, who's played by the wonderful Drew Starkey, who is absolutely incredible in this. I'll talk a little bit about the performances in a bit, but yeah. And then they kind of start building up a semi sort of relationship, and then they kind of go on a journey together, physically and metaphysically as well. They end up taking a trip down to South America because Lee is kind of obsessed with this new drug, which is ayahuasca, and he is convinced that it can help you read people's thoughts. And I feel like that kind of boils down to what the film is completely, because in our relationships with other people, whether that be friends or whether that be partners, and especially as queer people as well, we're like kind of obsessed with knowing what the other person is thinking. We want to be able to know that, because we want to be able to mold ourselves around that and be able to kind of help grow a relationship. But I think what this film does really well is it kind of suggests that if that was possible and you could hear what another person is thinking, especially a person that you want to be connected to, is not the thing you want to hear, that maybe is it such a good idea to kind of seek that out. But yeah, it starts off, it's kind of very grounded in reality for the first 2/3. And I think this is a complaint that I've seen from a few people, that in the third act it goes into this just like tapestry of abstract stuff that is such a departure from everything that has been built up to that point, that I can understand why people would kind of maybe be a bit off by it. But this is in the film when Leslie Manville's character is introduced and they're in the South American jungle. And I was just absolutely in awe. I don't want to spoil anything, but
yeah, I want to watch it. The trailer that they released recently sort of put a real sort of surreal element to it, and I'm really intrigued to see it. I missed it at trying to get tickets for it at the festival, but yeah, that trailer they released a few days ago, it's like, oh wow, this is sort of
and
a
it's not
all sorts.
Yeah, it's not really. I mean, there are kind of inklings of this kind of nature above the human level that Lee is experiencing. He has dreams, and there are certain things there's a motif throughout the beginning of the film which I absolutely adore. When he's first kind of building his relationship with Eugene, there are moments where they're kind of sat together, and they're kind of either talking or they're there's a bit where they go to the cinema, and there's an astral projection of Lee, and it kind of does a movement. So for example, when they're in the cinema, his arm moves over to Eugene and kind of caresses his face. and it's like this ghostly projection of Lee's wants and needs and his feelings and his desires, and it's just such a beautiful way of kind of portraying that kind of repression that a lot of queer people feel. Even in the present day, and I absolutely adored it. 5 stars.
You can hear the passion in how you're talking about it.
I mean, it's great.
Excellent. Moving on then. So next film we're going to talk about is, I actually saw the trailer for this last night for the first time, and even the trailer moved me, but it's Superman, the Christopher Reeve story.
Yeah.
It's a documentary about Christopher Reeve's rise to becoming the film star, and then obviously everyone knows about his near-fatal horse riding accident, left him paralysed, and there's basically just a story about his life after that, and Jack's going to talk us through it.
Yeah, it was fantastic documentary that I highly recommend seeing at the cinema. I know like a lot when it comes to documentaries, people are quite fine to just watch that at home. But just hearing like the way they cut this film together, the implementation of like the Superman score and sort of reworked, like a real reworked epic and orchestral soundtrack, and the shots from the films, and just sort of seeing these moments of him and his family sort of together, like just even like from the intimate moments to them, just like with home footage, to those sort of behind the scenes shots of him, like just becoming Superman. And the film's just, as you said, the trailer alone is enough to kind of like choke you up. And there was a lot of definitely a lot of sniffing and tears throughout this documentary and the screening. Even more so was the sort of opening gala, the screening of it, and his children were all there to introduce the film, and the directors of the film were there as well. That just sort of added another layer of like emotion on top of it. But it's a fantastic documentary, and as you say, it's that peek behind the curtain, just the impact it had on his family as well as him. And the film spends like a surprising amount of time talking about his wife as well, which I thought was like really interesting. You sort of learn more about her and how she was like, took this family under her wing when he couldn't, and just sort of seeing the impact it's like clearly having on him, seeing her have to, care for him and his family. It's like some real like crushing to see in terms of like getting the emotions out of you. And there's the moments of sort of like levity as well, and the sort of positivity that he was spreading when like his determination is like beyond anything I think I've ever seen in like a documentary. And seeing the like response to him, like when he first comes back to the Academy Awards, his first public appearance, his relationship with Robin Williams is explored, which is really fascinating, and has a lot of like standout moments. And again, just seeing him and his family's charity work that's still obviously, helping improve lives today is just a real, just sort of a real joy to watch. And the film just manages to balance those sort of real moments of like sadness, and you sort of feel this family is so unlucky but they're like such good people in the way that like his determination to kind of keep trying to like find a cure to him. He was just like the sort of main recurring determination like quote of the film is he is like just I will be walking again, and it's like this overarching theme. And the way it sort of it sounds tricky to describe it, but the way the film sort of implements the sort of Superman mythology onto him in reality is just so well executed and cleverly done. And I think it's a fascinating watch. If you're a fan of him and like the Superman films, you're going to love seeing that sort of footage behind the scenes and just sort of the whole process of him becoming like the Man of Steel. But if you're just generally interested in what he's done like charity wise and how he's impacted so many lives, and just really just a generally great documentary that will have something in it for like everyone. Like it's just it's fantastic, and I think it's only getting a limited release over here, but if you can see it at the cinema, definitely I say go see it at the cinema. It's one that deserves to be seen on a big screen.
I mean, probably at the time of his injury is probably one of the most recognisable faces in Hollywood. I would imagine.
Absolutely.
But the story after his accident probably isn't told as much as it probably should be.
No, it's fascinating.
For me, I was only born a year before his accident, so growing up, I wouldn't have known any of this. I probably wouldn't have looked at what he's doing after the movies and stuff like that. To see, sort of like you said, peek behind the curtain of that side of him after this tragic accident is something I'm going to definitely try and check out.
I'd highly recommend it. It's like just seeing him, because he's still he directed a feature after when he was paralyzed. He starred in a remake of Rear Window while he was paralyzed. It's just like the determination on him is just like incredible, and the film really showcases that, and like the sort of strength of his family as well to sort of carry on his legacy and through a lot more like trials and tribulations. It's just a real, brilliant documentary that has something for everyone.
Excellent. Well, definitely try and check that out if you can. We're going to move on to some animation of sorts. A film called Memoir of a Snail. Now, this is stop motion animation, if I'm right there. The synopsis is a bittersweet memoir of a melancholic woman called Grace Pudell, a hoarder of snails, romance novels, and guinea pigs. And that's all I've got. So, Alex, tell us a little bit more about this, please.
That about sums it up, to be honest. I think we can move on. No, so I watched this actually at a public screening because they screen it for press before the festival, so I wouldn't have had a chance to be able to see that. So thankfully I managed to get a ticket for the public screening, the first public screening. And Adam Elliot, who is the director, Australian director, who you might know from his other big kind of stop motion animation film called Mary and Max. He was there, and we did a bit of a. I wish we did a bit of a Q&A. No, but he did a bit of a Q&A with one of the programmers, and he was talking about how the film is centered around a saying from his favorite philosopher, Kierkegaard. And the saying is, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And one of the main characters in the film actually says that. And I just feel like it's such a beautiful kind of ethos to be able to build a film around, and you can really tell that kind of philosophy really fits into the story that they're telling. But yeah, so it is a stop motion animation film. Stop motion animation is one of my favorite art forms. I absolutely adore anything stop motion animation, all the way from Wallace and Gromit to the like films like Coraline and all that kind of stuff. As you said, it's about Grace, and we kind of meet Grace, or the way that the film is structured is we meet her after she has experienced everything we're about to see in the film. She Sarah Snook voices her of Succession fame, and she narrates her life, and we see her life through her words and through her experience. And it's kind of that kind of life can only be understood backwards is her recounting and trying to understand the things that she's been through and the coping mechanisms she developed to go through the terrible things that she went through. But yeah, it is an incredibly charming film. It's funny. It's emotional. It's actually really kind of, it's a bit naughty. Like, it's not, you know, with stop motion animation films, you expect it to be aimed towards kids, but this is very much an adult kind of R-rated stop motion animation. There's a lot of like kind of stop motion gore and kind of like blood, and there's even stop motion nudity, which isn't I've never seen that before. So weird, but part of the narrative. But yeah, it's weird the things that you kind of consider to kind of fit within the confines of a certain like genre or art form or that kind of stuff, and then when you see things that you don't usually relate to it, it's kind of disarming because you're like, oh, this shouldn't be here. but then it is really, really good. One of the things I love so much about this film is that it just has that handmade feel to it. Not that I'm complaining, but Leica films these days, especially the more recent ones, have this kind of polish and this finish to it that it almost doesn't feel like it's stop motion animation anymore, just because of how incredible it looks. And that makes it sound like
almost feels just animated rather than...
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And that almost sounds like a slight on Memoir of a Snail, but it doesn't. I just feel like when a film looks like it has been made by human hands, there's just an extra level of kind of admiration to kind of commit to it. I really, really enjoyed it. And that kind of point takes me to the point where I'll do my little against AI argument. Because in the credits of Memoir of a Snail, there's a little thing that says this film was made by human beings. Now, Adam Elliot suggested that wasn't to do with AI. It was actually to do with the fact that none of the film uses any computer-generated graphics. It's all in camera. So everything you see on screen was done with a camera and with people moving stuff. And then it's just kind of layered on to make it look like, it's happening. But I kind of took it as this is an FU to AI, because genuinely AI could not make a film like this. It is just so weathered in what it means to be an artist as a human being and as a creator and as an artist and as, working with clay and working with real things in real life. And it just, you couldn't just type that into a box and let it do it.
Well, you can see from the stills from the movie that almost like the fingerprints in the clay still there. They're not quite perfect. They're not quite rounded. Yeah. And I mean, that's a really good look. I mean, stop motion animation in itself it's
mind blowing.
It's mind blowing to think about how they do it and how long that would take.
Yeah, but... and that's the thing. Like, one of the themes of the film is kind of embracing imperfection as well, which it is kind of it kind of comes out really well in the work that you see on the screen, which is really good.
Excellent. We're going to continue with some animation, and we're going to talk about a film called Flow. Now, it follows, as far as I know, a cat that his home is devastated by a great flood, and he finds refuge on a boat populated by various species. This film interests me because, I mean, I'm a cat lover to start off with, but my favourite animal is a capybara, and there's an animated capybara, so I'm all in on this, and Jack's going to tell us a little bit more.
I can safely say it is the best capybara that has graced a cinema screen that I've seen. Like you, as a cat lover, cat owner, and a black cat owner, I was pretty much sold from the outset of this. And it was a real good film to end it was my last film of the festival, and it was just such a chilled out zen experience. Just, there's no dialogue in the film, it's purely just animal noises. So we're watching it pretty much play out in real time. So it will only sort of cut when the animals, like the cat is the sort of the lead character of the film, and it's just called the cat. When it falls asleep, the film will pass time and it picks up. We just sort of follow it around, and essentially it's one extended situation. You're just seeing it on its day to day, and then as you said at the start, a flood hits and it finds itself interacting with a bunch of animals that they would never, really get along with. And the film is it's a real charmer, and it's really just a real sweet kind of adventure story. The animation is it's quite unlike anything I've seen before. It's a really unique blend of fantastical, sort of otherworldly giant sort of constructs.
It's almost like oil painting kind
of. Yeah, it's a bit like, I actually had a great double build out with there because I saw The Wild Robot before I saw this, and that's an amazing animated film as well. And there was definitely some similarities in terms of, like you said, it's almost like a watercolor painting come to life. This was made by, I believe it was a French, Belgian, and British studios, and it's just an absolute joy. It looks fantastic. The animals like involved have so much personality when they're bickering and chirping and squeaking and meowing at each other, and just the expressions and animations. It's just a real joy to watch. But there's some real kind of stakes to it as well. Obviously, there's a sort of overarching theme of the environment and how, you know, you got to think of the animals when there's some pretty kind of, it hits you with the sort of more emotional beats. But it's sort of this rollicking, but at the same time zen-like adventure, and it's just gorgeous to look at as well. As I mentioned, it's sort of got this fantastical feel to it, almost like sort of if you're wandering through like a fantasy video game. There are huge ancient constructs that they're just sort of floating along on this boat through, and the film sort of will take a lot of time to sort of just let the camera hang around and just see the water, the fish in the water, these sort of giant whales that have kind of mythological markings on them and patterns. It's just a really unique film, and it's only 80 minutes long. It just glides along its runtime, and it's just a real treat. And as I said in my review, it is essential viewing if you're a cat lover, because this cat is up there with one of the best. Hopefully I believe it's got picked up already for distribution here. I think it's Curzon. Again, if you can, I'm glad I got to see it, but it had its IMAX screening earlier in the week, which it would have looked phenomenal, and the sound is great as well. There's a real fantastic score to it, but also just the sounds, or the mini sort of background sounds that you just pick up on, like the sort of lapping of the water hitting the side of the boat, just the individual animal sort of breathing sounds and noises. It's just a really immersive and really unique experience, and like just really, as I said as well, as Alex said, it's just great to see animation sort of thriving and just feeling entirely unique still. It's a real treat, real joy.
Perfect. It's definitely something I'm interested in as a cat lover. So obviously we can't talk all day about all these movies. So Alex, do you want to just give us a couple of honourable mentions of films that you feel like deserve a shout out?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we were talking about kind of disappointment before. Well, if we kind of go to the opposite of that, to surprise, the thing that surprised me the most was Andrea Arnold's Bird. I had like zero expectations going into it, and it ended up being one of my favourite films of the festival. Absolutely adore any kind of working class cinema, and the performances are incredible, and it's really, really, really good stuff. And then the other one would be We Live in Time. Don't forget to bring tissues to that, because you'll regret it if you don't.
And Jack, do you want to throw us a couple of honourable mentions?
Yeah, sure. So the next one for me will probably be I got to catch The Surfer, starring Nicolas Cage. Really weird, trippy, psychological drama that it's quite very tricky to explain, but you get Cage going crazy. It's got really stunning cinematography. It's shot on location at this sort of Australian beachside surfing, sort of private surfing area. It's basically a guy who gets sort of trapped in this loop, a nightmare loop, where he's just trying to make a deal go through on a house, and the locals immediately take against him. And it does that thing of questioning what is reality and what is all going on in his mind. And, it's always great to watch Cage go a bit crazy. And he certainly does that here. And then the second honourable mention for me, I loved Spencer and I really liked Jackie. So Maria was a film that I was really looking forward to see. I didn't really know anything about the sort of like the pop culture icon that Pablo Arana picked this time. I knew she was an opera singer, but I didn't sort of have that sort of preconceived knowledge like I did with Jackie and Princess Diana. And it was, like his previous films, it's like amazingly shot. It looks beautiful. Angelina Jolie is fantastic. Like she's like I haven't seen her in anything for quite a while. But this was like, it's one of the best performances I've seen from her. Just a fantastic film to look at. Definitely want to see on the big screen. I will say, compared to Spencer and Jackie, doesn't feel as focused. I felt the runtime a little bit in the final third, and it does get a little bit repetitive, I found. Especially, I think as well, I didn't have that knowledge of her before going into the film. But nonetheless, it's certainly worth a watch. But I will say it if we had to pick one that was sort of slightly disappointing, I'd say that, because Spencer, I loved. It was my favourite film of 2021, and I really enjoyed Jackie. But this is still definitely worth a watch if you like those two.
Agreed on that. Loved it.
Yeah. I mean, like you should say, it's worth seeing for her performance, like, regardless. Like, she is brilliant in it.
Yep.
Awesome. So that does it for podcast today. Thanks for joining me, guys. Got any plans to watch anything coming up?
One film I missed at LFF was Room Next Door, the new Almodovar film. It came out last week, but it's showing in my local this week, so I'm on it, and I'm very excited.
Excellent. And
yeah,
Jack?
I'm off next week, so there's a load of new releases on the 1st of November, so I'm going to try and catch Heretic, Juror, number 2. I need to catch Smile 2 before that goes. I was going to do that this week, but I didn't get around to it. And so got a few planned next week, and I don't know if we can say, but an early screening of a new Christmas classic starring Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans, which I'm sure Alex is losing his mind on the
I'll say nothing.
Yeah, so got a pretty busy cinema week next week, but it should be good.
I've also got an early screening coming up next week, which I won't reveal what it is now.
Sounds exciting though.
But let's just say it's my most anticipated film in probably about 10 years. So
I think I've got it, but I won't say.
You got it.
Can you work it out, guys? Anyone's listening? Can you work it out?
Excellent. So that does it for today. Find all of our London Film Festival coverage on filmfocusonline.com, as well as more of our work. Like, subscribe, and share this podcast. And find us on all socials at Film Focus Online. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.